G'day guys, Tills20 here and welcome back to Springfield. The long requested and the long awaited Springfield Monorail is finally happening. Super excited for this. It's been very long requested by you guys and we've just needed to do some shuffling around and figuring out where things are going to sit. But now it's finally upon us. So we're going to get to it very shortly in the time lapse, but first I do want to show you a couple of things that we're doing off camera. Mostly to do with planning, but I also have reshuffled a couple of locations just to make more sense. So first up, I figured out where north, east, southwest is because that was something that we definitely needed because according to the Springfield wiki, there is like certain suburbs that actually have like West Springfield and East Springfield, and yeah, we needed to have those locations. So I've decided that up here is north. We've got Shelbyville up north. Then of course over here is east, where I have put East Springfield, which is sort of more center than anything else, but I think if we're going to put it anywhere, makes the most amount of sense with what we've already got. East Springfield is actually one of those more rundown type of neighborhoods that this is where Nelson lives, and I think the Crazy Cat Lady lives there. We now have South down here, which is not perfect because I mean, I don't think the harbor is south in the real location, or the closest we can get, but I do know there is South Squidport Road, so I don't know if that makes huge amounts of sense. Whatever, we're going to work with what we can work with. And then of course we have West, which is where all the desert is too. So pretty happy that we've figured that out. It sort of fits in with what we wanted. I've also just reshuffled a couple of districts around here too. So we've got Bumtown over here now. Let's just have a look at these districts. There we go. So we've got Bumtown, sort of small, Theatre District, East Springfield again, Lower East Side. Little Italy is going to sit over here. I've put the Russian District. I've put Crackton over here. Little Newark. Yeah, I've just been sort of figuring out where some things go. I hope they make the most sense as I could possibly get. So in terms of the monorail, we've got this path over here. So I'm thinking the main monorail station is going to sit right here, which is just behind the courthouse. We'll have a stop in Little Italy. We'll have a stop opposite the main train station. I'm hoping to get to Jebediah Springfield Park in this episode, but I'm thinking we'll do another station here. Maybe the convention center will sit here, which will have another stop, and then another main area will go here next to Chinatown. And then that's it. I think it's about 5 stops, and that's about it. We could actually expand it out, and this is where I need your opinions. We could actually expand out the monorail so that it actually takes this diagonal road and heads over to Squidport, which is where Burns Casino is, and a couple more touristic locations. It's also heading towards the train station, the airport. So we could actually justify going out here too, but you know, like as much as trying to stick to the show as possible, it seems to mostly stick to the center of the city. So that's why I've stuck it around here, but you know, we could actually venture out into Duff Stadium and other locations. So hit me up if you do think that. Before we get into it, I am planning to use a monorail line that is a monorail station that doesn't have a building. And I'm going to try and make the monorail station using procedural objects because it is a specific type of station. I can't really get away with using this. But I don't actually have the asset made. So if anyone's interested in creating the monorail station for Springfield, I would love that, of course. But for the time being, let's just see what we can do with procedural objects and wish me luck. All right, let's get into it. Okay, I take back what I just said about the station. Do not make me a monorail station. I am really happy with the version that I make with procedural objects. That's pretty much what I do in this episode. We're going to be working on the main station and then a couple of the other stations that are around the city. The ones that we spoke about in the live play, we mostly just placing down placeholders for them, figuring out where they're going to sit. But look, I dare say we might change a couple of them over the next few weeks, and I'm happy to add some extra ones or remove some. You know, it's all about trial and error and seeing how things feel. But overall, I am quite happy with the layout of it. I think it makes the most amount of sense to just keep it around the downtown. And for those of you who are less familiar with The Simpsons, this is reference to one particular episode. It's an absolute classic episode. And the general gist of the storyline is that Springfield, they look to invest a lot of money. They discuss their options in a town meeting, which is where they meet Lyle Lanley. He charms their socks off and they all get fooled to invest in the monorail. So the monorail ends up getting built in Springfield, and very early on you realize that Lyle Lanley has completely ripped him off. A lot of corners have been cut and the monorail is a complete disaster. It doesn't even make one full circuit around Springfield until something goes wrong. It accelerates to some ridiculous speed. Luckily, Homer, who is the driver of the monorail, figures out a way of stopping it and everybody is saved.
Dad, you're a hero.
Yes, son, I'm the best mono thingy guy there ever was.
An awesome episode, and of course, my version of the monorail is a version where everything is okay still, nothing has gone wrong. So I guess some sort of alternate universe of this monorail, but you know, I'm still trying to stay true to the information that this show gives me, at least that one particular episode. So a lot of the decisions that I make are based on that episode, and I just try and find as many clues as possible. So one thing that I did notice is that the monorail does go through the suburbs. There is one part where Barney accidentally drops the monorail onto someone's house.
I hate that sound.
So there is a monorail that does stretch through the suburbs. There's also a couple of shots where you can actually see it going past some houses too. So I figured we do need it to go through some portion of the suburbs within Springfield, which first of all doesn't feel very realistic, but I'm sure there are some cases where that does happen. You can also see that I have to make it go over this train line. There's not huge amounts of clearance, but like I managed to make it work. Yeah, we do end up getting a bit of a clearance there. And then another thing that I don't think is very realistic is that it's not like you wouldn't typically see a monorail in a city the size of Springfield. So I think first up, that's just out of the question. Like I don't think a city this size would have a monorail. But you know, again, hit me up if you live in a place that has a monorail and is the same size of what Springfield would probably be like. And then the next thing, I'm not really sure if this is so much the case in reality, but I don't know how many monorails are just one directional. This one is, like, all the references that I can see, it's just one direction, and so we just got the single line. But of course, like most people, when they build monorail in Cities Skylines, they use the two directions. So I don't know, just sort of feels a bit unrealistic, but look, we're not really going to go for too much realism. I do try and find the balance between, you know, something that could be true to life and also just trying to stick with what The Simpsons give us. And yeah, we don't have a huge amount of references from that episode, but what I do have, I think I managed to stay pretty true to that. It was a bit of a stretch, but it was a hell of a lot of fun to make, and we will be revisiting the monorail in other episodes because I don't get it all done in this one. So far I have just been dragging out the path, trying to figure out where I want this to go. I am staying pretty true to the path that I decided before, and it's sticking pretty much within the downtown regions, going to a couple of other locations that I think will be holding a fair amount of people at some point, whether they be an arena or a park or just or like close to the train station. I'm also looking at the episode and just seeing like what references I can take from what sort of layouts the monorail, what sort of interaction the monorail has with the rest of the environment. I've noticed that it goes over a lot of roads, so I made sure that we dragged it over some avenues. And then it also runs adjacent to a couple of roads too. So yeah, also managed to do that. That's where the stations are going to be mostly at. They're going to be just like opposite some of the roads, but at some point it'd be kind of cool to have it go on top of a road, but I don't really know exactly how I'm going to do that. Because I ended up not using any of the pre-existing stations. Once I built the main station, I realized that I could actually just use that base to then create the other stations throughout Springfield. And I like that because it's sort of the same, well, it is the same architecture style it would have been. And of course, they would have used the same architectural style for the stations. Like generally when you have stations for a train line within a city, they will sort of use the same style of station. So when I do create the station for Little Italy and also East Springfield, you'll notice that it is the same as the main station, which is really fun because it's just like totally custom station. And that is something that we are sort of just doing not from the episodes, because as far as I can tell, there is only one station in Springfield, and it's the main one, which doesn't make a huge amount of sense. It sort of feels like the only reason why you take the monorail is so you can go on a ride rather than use it for public transport. So my version, it's for public transport. And you will see, like, I will do a few differences, including what I end up doing for the main station, which is what we're starting to work on right now. So yeah, it was honestly kind of fun to try and hunt down as many different shots and concepts for the station. But, you know, if we're going to take it, you know, particularly from the episode, like, there's only like 2 shots. So what I definitely knew that I had to include, there is this tower that sits on top, and this is sort of like the control booth for the monorail, so I guess they can see the whole layout of the monorail. In fact, they can. There's this one great shot where you can actually see the whole monorail stretching through Springfield. And then there is this lower deck where there are these 2 balconies on either end of the station. And then in the middle, there seems to be this like middle floor where there's probably some sort of waiting room or lobby, and I'll end up putting some escalators there. Actually, I end up using these really great escalators, which again is not part of the show. Like, that's just my own interpretation of a monorail station, trying to make it look a little bit more realistic. But yeah, they're animated and they just look so damn cool. Like, yeah, just get excited for that. But at the moment, we are piecing together the control tower. This thing turns out pretty decent. So basically this whole building I have created from one vanilla commercial building. I chose it because it has sort of similar windows, and I was able to change the color so that it was this yellowish color, which is basically the color of the station that I knew that I had to I definitely had to include the color, because I think that's one of the more iconic things. So yeah, this whole building is just made from this one building, and I've basically just spliced it all together, and this took me pretty much all day. It took so long. A lot of deleted footage you're not seeing, a lot of trial and error. There's like these awnings, these blue awnings, that again is something that is quite iconic with this building that I knew that I had to include, which was just a bit of a pain because I didn't really know how I was going to do it. But I did end up using this shipping container and just changing the color, and then yeah, I was just able to just change the shape slightly to splice it into the buildings. But yeah, I'm going to put those awnings in different locations, not exactly totally how it looks. I'm also using a lot of references from the Simpsons Tapped Out game, which I've never played, but it's been super useful to get ideas of how some of the buildings look. It's all isometric, and you can tell that they've tried to fill in the blanks for areas buildings that they didn't exactly know how they look. So it's just this really fun trial and error. I really do enjoy trying to figure out what this is meant to look like, and trying to make it somewhat realistic, and then also trying to be true to the Simpsons. It's just this really great fine balance that I'm really enjoying. Didn't actually expect it to be so fun to do something like this, but it's actually just been like super interesting. Now we are working on the interior. So we've got these escalators on one side and a staircase on the other. These escalators are amazing. They're animated, so you will see them moving up and down, and I do drag a path so that people do use it. And then I do drag a road that goes through the middle of the station. So people go through the entrance and then go up and down the escalators, which is very cool. Unfortunately, because it's only one direction that the monorail is going, the other side of the station just isn't functional. So you won't ever see people there, and I don't know, it's just one of those things. I didn't have a blank station that I could work with that had just one line on the station. But that's fine. I sort of think that even if this was just going in one direction, I think it makes more sense for there to be 2 sides to the station anyway, because I think sometimes monorails would probably sit side by side, maybe, potentially, maybe not, I don't know. But look, I think it still works. Instead of using, so there is like this awning that goes on top of the station in the show, but I decided to use something a little bit different, and I used this glass one. So you can see how mine's starting to take a little bit of a different angle, and it's just a bit different, but I do think that this sort of makes more sense, and it feels more realistic than it would from the show. I'm also using some of these custom billboards that are so good. But yeah, a couple of them, just made them a little bit smaller with procedural objects so that they can fit on the station. And now that I have decided the main layout of the building, I can just go in and start adding in the extra details. So putting in a lot of surface so that people have places to walk around, and the railings too. A lot of the pieces that I'm using for the walkways are part of this really great collection where you can use all these pieces to make custom pedestrian overpasses for roads, but they work really well for other uses, and using it for a station like this just works really well. And you might be able to tell, but I was originally using some of the ploppable surface for the walkway, but I ended up swapping it out for this really great tile that is also part of that collection, the walkway collection. And they're just great because they're just these little tiles on there. They're like these big blocky pieces, and you can get a whole bunch of different sizes that line up really nicely. I've used them quite a lot in my builds, and it just worked perfectly for this one. But yeah, just filling in the gaps now, putting in a bit more detail and trying to figure out what this would really look like. So lots of places for people to sit, there's bins and lamps and other things like that. Something that I opted out from including from the episode is the main entrance. So the main entrance from the show is actually on the left-hand side of the building, which I don't know if makes a huge amount of sense. But yeah, there is this one shot where all the celebrities are walking in and going on the red carpets. There's a whole event for the first rides for the monorail.
And let me say, may the force be with you.
Do you even know who I am?
But I don't know, I just think that the entrance should probably be in the center. So I've decided just to leave it the way it was. And I think it just looks way better that way. But then the next question was, what was I going to include down below? Because from the show, it looked just blank. There wasn't anything underneath, but typically when you have like a train station like this or a monorail station, you will have shops underneath. So this is another aspect that I decided to change and just make a little bit more realistic. But originally I was just going to leave it blank walls and then yeah, just some hedges, but I don't know, it just didn't look right. Didn't look lively enough. I wanted this to feel quite busy and bustling. I plan to come back here and do a little bit more work, maybe in a live stream or when we work on the downtown a bit more, but it would be nice to get this feeling a bit bustling, get some buses and other public transport around here too, which I'll actually include a bus station on the left hand side that you'll see the monorail run past, just because I figured this would be a bit of a transport hub, so yeah, we will end up including that. I included the sign, which is I think that's just so looks so great, and I love how easy it was to make. Just very simple text on the wall, and that's about it. Now I'm starting to add some of the shops, and I just decided that it would be sort of cool to maybe have a Krusty Burger underneath as part of the station, because we were speaking. I think it might have been a live stream we were talking about this, or maybe some people left me some comments, but we were discussing how Krusty Burger is a chain and that we should have many restaurants of Krusty Burger around Springfield. And I just thought it might be sort of fun to have one spliced into the building here. So yeah, we got a Krusty Burger. Just kept it really simple, just spliced in the awning, and there is another commercial building underneath there, and I ended up placing a block so that people do actually use it as a restaurant. And by the way, if you ever see anything that I just placed down using procedural objects and you think, oh cool, that looks great, but what's the functionality of it? I guess it's just for looks now. I always place down buildings within my within these areas so that they still function the way that they should. So you can imagine that all this commercial underneath here, you know, people are still actually going into this station as well to visit some of the commercial districts that are underneath. So yeah, you can expect that from pretty much all the buildings that I am placing down in Springfield. And yeah, Krusty Burger is just one of them. But now we're starting to work on some of the other stations. But you can see how long this project is. You can see how long it is taking me to work on this. There's many pieces for this station, so copying it over to Little Italy was a little bit of a mission, but it did work. And I did want the station to resemble the main station for the monorail, but just feel a little bit smaller and a little less grand. So yeah, trying to keep the same sort of general style, the same color scheme, slightly different types of commercial blocks underneath. And I think that's how we're going to make the subtle differences between each station, is just to have different types of commercial underneath each station. And also, like, you know, maybe there'll be some parkland around some of them, and just some subtle differences. Even just some trees and some foliage. But something that I really did love about this was being able to use this sign to then actually write what station it is in each location. And that just made my day because it just looks so cool having these stations, and you can just totally customize them because procedural objects is just the best and allows you to edit it. So yeah, it's just so fun seeing those signs. Now we're working on East Springfield Station. I actually changed where this sits. Originally it was closer to the main station, but sitting more in the suburbs. I ended up moving it down a couple of blocks so that it's still somewhat close to the main station. However, it's now sitting on this main street, and it's a little bit closer to the main hub of Springfield. So I think that probably makes more sense having a monorail station on a main road rather than just smack bang in the middle of suburbia. And I'll put a bit more commercial around there, and we'll have to try and think of some other things to place around East Springfield, which is somewhat of a dodgy neighborhood. It's near Bumtown, and originally the elementary school was here, but I ended up changing that to closer to where Evergreen Terrace is going to be. But my friends, that is it for today's episode. We'll have to revisit the monorail and add in those extra stations. But next week, we're going to be more focusing on the recreational areas. We're going to be building Jebediah Springfield Park, we're going to build the zoo, the botanical gardens, and the train station, or the monorail station that's going to be near there. So it's going to be a pretty fun episode. Don't miss it. It's going to be lots of fun. Before I head off, I'm going to give a special shout out to some of my patrons who might be trolling me with some of their names, or their usernames are just not very shout out friendly. But Lachlan, Y100921, Falcon, Damo Cooper, Rixo12, Samuel Stelzer, and Ant Pez. If you guys are interested in supporting the channel and hearing me butcher your names at the end of each episode, then you can check out my Patreon page. It's in the description below. Any support really helps out a lot, and the support is just hugely appreciated. Guys, thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!